think everyone has a booze that is their absolute alcohol kryptonite. It's that drink that you may have overindulged in your reckless high school days, and now you simply can't stand. I have friends that can't smell Southern Comfort without wanting to gag, or Jack Daniels, even decades later, still gives them wet mouth. And I think there's bookish equivalents of those early reads that were shoved down our throat that has left us gun-shy ever since. And for most, I think the crown royal of literary fiction is still Shakespeare. Stuff you're forced to read in high school, the with soft but light through yonder window breaks, the Romeo and Juliets, the Twelfth Nights, those reads that has convinced I don't know how many people that they're not readers. The Great Gatsby, essentially tequila, but more so than your poor choice of consuming or over-consuming Sours of Gold, it somehow extends to all tequilas. And The Great Gatsby turns a lot of people off from literary fiction entirely, and so they snuggle up to sci-fi and fantasy for the rest of their lives. Or if you're like my coworkers and a lot of peers in the tech community, it's just growing up and settling for reading just business books from good to great, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Blue Ocean Strategy. I mean, for me, frankly, that's just like Fireball. No shade if you like cinnamon whiskey, but frankly, I think it's an abomination. Anyway, for me, Canadian fiction was peach schnapps. And I wish I could tell you that my regrettable high school overindulgence didn't out me as a cocktail swilling souse with all the taste of a trashy 16-year-old Southern debutante, but there you go. Joy Kugawa, Carol Shields, Margaret Atwoods. I don't even remember the books. I just remember being bored out of my mind, dry, moderately bland, but filled with good literary fiber. And so from there on in, Canadian fiction was just an easy nope. I thought all CanLit was old women, gray skies, wide open spaces. Then last year, I get contacted by the Toronto International Festival of Authors to be a delegate. Now, given when it happens and where it is, Toronto, it was chock full of Giller longlisters. And so, doing my homework, I dive in and read a ton of those, and holy crap, were they good. And I know, stop the presses, literary awards occasionally pick good reads, but still, I can't believe how long I slept on this particular award. Last year, my absolute favorite was from the shortlist, Small Game Hunting at the Local Coward Gun Club by Megan Gale Coles. I know I myself and a lot of other people found that it was a bit tough slogging to get the book started, but then it just hits you like a ton of bricks. It is focused on an upscale restaurant called The Hazel in downtown St. John's, Newfoundland, around Valentine's Day, and it explores ideas of misogyny, abuse, rape, silent complicity. I know it's a lot, but it is so good. Easily one of my favorite reads of last year. Of course, there was last year's Giller award-winning novel reproduction from Ian Williams, which explores ideas of nature versus nurture, poetic form, and just nailing the voices of this large cast of interconnected characters, from the affluent and privileged white guy, the biracial hustling tween, the Portuguese suburban divorcee dad that's just holding on to past glories, the coquettish yet still naive teenage daughter pining for the long-haired guitar-playing dude at Zeller's. I mean, it just all comes together so well. It was so much fun. And of course, they had anthropomorphized sperm. There's Michael Crummey's The Innocents, which frankly, I'm a Michael Crummey stan. I'm going to love anything this guy puts out. So of course that made the list. And then there's Michael Christie's Greenwood, which is my second favorite book about trees. Though no shade to Christie's book, because my first is still Richard Powers' The Overstory, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 2019. So yeah, second place, not a bad spot to be. It starts off in the future, moves back in time to the turn of the century, and like the concentric rings of a tree, moves back into the future. And do you know how hard a writing feat that is, to write the ending, go back in time, but still leave enough space that there's mysteries to solve, connections to make, and all while making it look easy? I mean, it kills me this book doesn't have legs, that it's not being talked about more just a year out. Seriously, pick any of these up. And then this year's long list is a continuing tradition of fantastic CanLit reads. Actually, scratch that. Fantastic reads, period. I mean, there is Leanne Simpson's Newpoming, The Cure for White Ladies, talking about gods walking around among us with ancient knowledge while looking for tarps to go on sale at Canadian Tire, and rummaging old sinks and toilets from rich suburban neighborhoods to drop on the reserve, battling sobriety and trying to eke out some sort of an existence when your ancestral homeland is buried under millions of tons of concrete and steel that is the metropolis of Toronto. So clearly this is writing that's not meant for me, but that it didn't mean I didn't find it humorous and beautiful and poetic and just an incredible read. If you are doing Indigenathon this month, I highly recommend that you put this book on your list. There's Annabelle Lyon's Consent, about two sets of sisters, both so different from each other. One set, we have twins, the studious, frumpy sister in contrast to the thrill-seeking, wild-child narcissist. The other set is the sensual academic and her mentally disabled sister. Now, when tragedy visits those sisters, their stories begin to converge, and then it turns into a bit of a mystery that turns into a thriller. I mean, Annabelle Lyon does this thing where you never know which way the story is going to veer from page to page, and it always keeps you guessing. It is such a fun read. And Suvanka Thamavongsa's How to Pronounce Knife, which was this collection of short stories that completely hit me where I live. It's this idea of being a foreigner here in Canada and navigating that space. I mean, growing up in a German town, my brother and I were the only Asians in our entire primary school. By high school, I could count on one hand the number of Asians that we had. And that meant I was always paying attention, trying to sort of unravel the clues as to how to fit in. The Koreans even have a word for this. It's nunchi, this idea of being able to read the room, to understand what is not being communicated, to have a social sense of the environment that you're in. And I think the short story collection examines a lot of that, about trying to pay attention, to fit in, but always finding yourself somewhat of a step behind. It is the immigrant experience and leaving behind the familiar, and then their kids trying to navigate this new. And then coming up hard against white mediocrity. I mean, this idea that you have generations that were born and raised here, or at least generations that are familiar with the language and WASPy tradition, that makes it so easy for them to win the prized red yo-yo, the front office job, the manager position. And none of this is done with any malicious intent. They are completely oblivious to their own privilege. They never have to question their worth or their vaunted place in this sort of hierarchy. Anyway, I loved how that was all there on the page, and I found the short story collection really enjoyable. And once again, the long list has introduced me to what is probably my favorite read of the year. It's Francesca Equiazzi's Butter Honey Pig Bread. This is a sensual love letter to a time pre-COVID where you could invite strangers into your home and feed them dinner, where you could travel to far-flung places like Halifax, France, and Lagos. You could meet someone for a quaint tea, that you could still hook up with people, and that when I invoke this idea of restaurants, it was a sensual delight of smells and experiences and noise and people packed together, instead of now where you think about mom and pop shops going out of business and booze being shut down so that patrons can maintain the socially distant spaces needed. Waiters and waitresses take your orders wearing face masks and face shields while you're thinking about viral loads and aerosol particles. And this thing has 20 reviews on Goodreads, and that is a crime. I mean, everyone is talking about Jesse and Bernardine Evaristo, and they're going to sleep on this writer. That is just unbelievable. You should be talking about it. This is not hyperbole. That book is that good. And if you are filling out some woke reading bingo card, the author is a queer black woman. Just stop sleeping on this read. Pick up Butter Honey Pig Bread. It is so worth it. I mean, I get it. It's a small publishing company. Maybe they can't have the same sort of marketing push, but I don't know why this book isn't being talked about more. It is that good. And it kills me because it happens every year with the Giller Prize. These books are fantastic, and I don't know why they're not getting the outward push, the marketing push, the recognition that they so deserve. All right, deep breath. Anyway, the Giller Prize winner will be announced November 9th. Not that it really matters. The long list is where the action's at. A ton of great reads there. And while Peach Schnapps probably is never going to find a place in my bar, ever, CanLit has certainly found a place on my shelves. Well deserved. And it probably should be on yours as well. Please, seriously, it's so good. Anyway, that's it for me this week. I hope you have a great week of reading, and we'll talk to you soon.